The METUS Tech Show.
Welcome to the METUS Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
The METUS Tech Show.
All right, guys. So, one of the best sources of food, the ocean. I will eat just about anything that comes out of the ocean. As long as it was alive, I'll eat it.
It's pre-marinated.
You said
Was that?
pre-marinated.
It's pre-marinated.
Yeah, exactly. It's been marinated in salt water. But, there's the typical, the shrimp and the lobsters, I think most people who've tried it, you either hate it or love it. I think a lot of people I know love lobster. But anything, I like any kind of fish, anything with a shell on it, crabs, clams, of course. Clams, I'll eat them, little cherry stones and little neck clams. I'll eat them right out of the ocean, cut them open with a sharp knife and right out of the shell, and boom, down the gullet it goes. Raw clams, I love those things. Fried clams, I love steamers.
No, I don't do raw ocean filters.
Oh, yeah, no, I love
Can't do that either.
I've never. I have friends of mine that'll, they do the whole oyster plate, like a whole bucket of oysters or whatever it is, cold on ice, and they slurp those up with some hot sauce, and it just
What do you call it? What's the oyster Rockefeller? Is that just like a shot? Is that what that is? Like a single shot of an oyster or something?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
A little Tabasco, I think. A little Tabasco. But I'm not crazy about oysters. I'll eat them, but it's not. I'd rather have a cherry stone or a little neck clam.
Nope.
But they're good. Actually, I've even gone in back in the Azores. They have on the rocks. They have these. They're called limpets, and there's just one shell, and there's like a suction cup with a shell around it. They stick to the rocks, and you go and just peel them right off the rocks.
Is that the same as periwinkles?
No. Those are what we used to call them lapish. The periwinkles,
okay,
we used to call boos, are like little snails, tiny little snails. I mean, they're like pea-sized snails. And you go, you take the seaweed at low tide. The seaweed's hanging there on these rocks, and you lift up the seaweed, and you got the barnacles, like little tiny snails, and you rip them off the rocks, and you bring them in. You take a little needle. You dig it in there, you pull it out, and in your mouth they go right there. Fresh. It doesn't get any fresher than that.
Yeah, I mean, we used to call them periwinkles. We would go to Newport once a year, and we would scrape them off the rocks like a 5-gallon bucket. We would bring it home, and my dad would whip up some hot marinade with crushed pepper and salt and garlic and whatever, and boil them. And then we'd sit out in the screen house in the backyard in the summer, and you grab a pin, and you would pull. And Scott's face right now is you would take this pin and you would stick it into this snail, this shell, and you'd pull it out. And it kind of looks like a booger, and you pull it out. And
I just took the words right out of my mouth.
Right there, you just gave me a hard no. Before it was a no.
And I would turn my head in disgust when I seen my family eating those. I was probably like 8 or 9 years old, and then I tried one. I was like, well, this isn't bad.
What I like out of the ocean, grouper. I like those type of things.
I didn't think you ate any.
Oh, I love grouper, snapper. I'll love them. Swordfish. I like swordfish tacos are really good for me, but grouper is probably my number one fish I like to eat.
Okay.
I like swordfish too. I like shark, like mako shark.
Yep.
It's not quite as good as swordfish, but if it's cooked right, it's okay. But grouper is good. Flounder, I like flounder. It's a bottom-feeding fish, but I kind of like the flounder fillets.
Yeah, flounders can't beat
cod,
flounder.
of course. Cod and haddock, and
the best thing I ever had, it was fresh. I mean, we got it. We like off the dock. It was blue crab.
Oh, those are good.
Yeah,
that's probably the best thing I've ever tasted in the ocean.
We used to, when I was young, we used to go and catch them. Me and my buddy would take a canoe out into the marshes in Westport up in New England, and we had some yarn. We just used yarn, right? And we would stop at a seafood place and get a bunch of fish carcasses. They were just leftover fish after they filleted the fish, and the guy would give us a whole bag of these things. and we would tie it onto this yarn, throw it out into the marsh, and then come back like an hour later, and then you have like 6 or 7 blue crabs attached to this thing, and we would just net them in and fill up a bucket and boil them. And
I'd say that was good.
Several years ago, my wife and I were on vacation in Portugal, and we're on the coast, and I had a little cousin who lived there, and he took me out on the rocks at low tide, and he took this like broomstick with no broom on it, and he would tie a white cloth to the end of it, and in between the rocks, those puddles, and stuff, he would stick it down under the water between the rocks, and an octopus would come out and wrap around it. He pulled the stick out, and he caught himself an octopus. He'd catch. Yeah. In an afternoon, he'd catch a dozen of these things and bring them home, prepare them, cook them up, eat them. I love octopus.
Yeah, I watched my dad do that when I visited Portugal when I was 6 years old. I watched my dad walk down the side of a cliff, down to the edge of the rocks, caught an octopus. He was with some other guy. He caught an octopus, and immediately they take the octopus and they turn it inside out, and it dies. Huh. Yeah, and octopus, another thing that I thought was disgusting until I started eating it, and it's the best thing in the world.
And I have to, for me in seafood, I'm not really that big, but I'll eat certain ones. I thought I would never like octopus until we went to the restaurant in Orlando.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What was
the Portuguese restaurant?
Oh, yeah. And Roland ordered it. Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a little bite of it. I was shocked out. It was good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a fine line in cooking octopus.
That's what I heard.
If you overcook it or undercook it, it's got to be perfect, and they do a good job there.
So, real quick, before I know, because we're going to switch over into our segment, but the first time I ever cooked shrimp, okay, I'm a meat guy, right? So I'm, low and slow, whatever it is. The first time I ever cooked shrimp, I think I cooked it for like 20 minutes. It was a rubber ball.
Yeah, you're eating elastics at that point.
You can actually cook shrimp under running hot water.
Yeah,
it cooks so easy and so.
I realize that now, but that was this is years ago. But yeah.
That's funny. You probably hated shrimp. That's like me and pork chops. My wife will ask me if I want pork chops, and my mother used to dry the heck out of pork chops. They're like shoe leather, so I don't like pork chops because of that.
Yeah, Paul, Scott and I were talking about that yesterday. That cooking a pork chop where it's nice and juicy and tender is a difficult thing. And I think it has a lot to do with the cut of meat.
It does.
Choosing the right cut of meat. Just grabbing a pack of pork chops off the shelf at the supermarket. Sometimes not the greatest cut of meat. But anyway, welcome to the METUS Tech Show, everybody. Steve Pimentel here, and I got Scott Tallman on the call.
Hey, guys.
And we have Paul Shaves.
Say hi, guys.
Yeah.
Hi, Paul. Is that what you're going to say? Say hi, Paul.
Yeah.
Hi, Paul.
Say hi, Paul. Hi, Paul.
All right. So today, guys, we're going to be talking about function settings. Now, let's clear a couple of things up, Steve. I don't know when it was. Several episodes ago, we did one on cutting jumpers, right?
Yeah.
So what's the difference between that and what we're going to talk about today?
So we were just going to talk about P-series function settings done through a controller, but I want technicians to understand the difference between cutting jumpers and doing function settings through a controller, and why we're cutting jumpers. And I still consider function settings, cutting jumpers, a function setting, right? Because you're customizing a unit. That's what a function setting is. I'm changing the logic of this unit to suit a certain application. So with M series units, they don't have dip switches.
Nope.
They don't have TB15 for a wired controller. Even though we can use an MHK2 or Kumo Cloud
SDW
or SDW on a CN105, changing or going to that function setting and trying to change it, it has no effect through a controller on an M series wall mount, floor mount, and one-way cassette. And when I say M series, I say the model number starts with an M.
True M series, as we call it.
True M series, right. Yeah. So when you're ordering parts for an M series, and a lot of people don't realize this, when you order a circuit board, control board for an M series, there is a different control board for each model. When you're ordering control boards for P series, you're ordering one board that fits in multiple indoor units. What are you changing?
Capacity, dip switches.
Dip switches to change the capacity, right? So that's the difference. There are 28 function settings available for M and P series, but there are very few available for the M series wall mount, floor mount, one-way cassette, and one-to-one P series outdoor unit, because there are functions on the outdoor unit that we can do. It's just very limited.
All right, so let me make sure I understand this correctly, right? We got a unit out of the box, we install it, indoor and outdoor, pipe it, wire it, everything, the whole rigmarole, it's ready to go, right? Most of the time, I'm not saying most of the time, but a lot of times I can just leave it alone. But if there's something about the way that unit operates, I need to do a function setting. You know, on the M series, the true M series units, model number starts with an M, I'm going to be cutting a jumper.
Right. So let me give you an example. Contractor installs a wall unit in a finished attic with gabled ceilings and knee walls. Think about it in your head, how short those ceilings are and how tight that space is. Sometimes you're restricted to installing a wall unit 5 or 6 feet up on a wall instead of 7 or 8 feet up on a wall like it normally is. How could that cause a problem? Well, think about it. The height detection offset that's built into any high wall mounted unit, wall mount, ceiling cassettes, or any of those, there's a 2 to 3 degree offset.
Every unit varies.
Yeah,
on that
every unit varies. And there's that offset is there to run the unit 3 degrees more so that the person sitting down low, that temperature in that space is equal to what they set it to for a set point.
Right.
So if a contractor happens to install a wall mounted unit in a space like that, where with short ceilings, real tight space, maybe it's a little oversized for that space, he may want to cut the jumper to get rid of that height detection offset so that when the customer sets it for 70 degrees in heat, it's going to satisfy at 70 degrees in heat.
Yes.
Right? It's not going to have that extra offset. So customer's not feeling, hey, calling you back when you got to go on a call back. And the customer says, no matter what I do, I set it for 70 degrees and it's always 74 in the space. Yeah. Well, that's your answer. Maybe height detection or cutting the jumper for shutting the fan off in heat mode when it satisfies.
Yeah. Because
we all know our indoor units come out of the box, fan runs continuously. Right,
which we call fan thermal on.
That's probably one of the most common ones. Is people, I want the fan turned off when it's satisfied. They want the fan off. But just to clarify on that height offset, if I'm in a living room and I've got 8-foot ceilings and I'm sitting there on my lazy boy watching TV, right, the heat rises naturally. So it may be 2, 3, 4 degrees warmer at close to that ceiling than it is where I'm sitting down. And that's why it does that. So the unit out of the box is going to account for that. Right. So in your scenario, when I have the low ceilings, I'm not going to be 7 or 8 feet up off the floor. I'm going to be 5. So now if you're at that 5-foot ceiling or 5.5 or 6 feet or whatever it is, that temperature is not going to be as warm,
right,
actually, as that unit may think it is. So that's why you got to change that.
Yeah, and I want the listeners to make sure that they're applying the right indoor unit. Is a wall unit the correct application for 4 or 5 feet up on a wall?
Absolutely not.
What kind of unit should have gone there?
We have a floor mount.
A floor mount,
MFG.
Right? So
Yeah,
make
MFG.
sure you're applying the right unit to begin with. Floor mounts are great for an application such as an attic with finished attic type of scenario, short ceilings, that type of scenario. Floor mount unit is the way to go.
And a better way to look at it is the floor mount unit, the MFZ, actually mounts on the wall.
It is.
So I like to refer to that as the low wall unit, and the MSZ as a high wall unit.
I call the floor mount a glorified wall mount. That's what I call it. But also for listeners too, you have to remember where we sense temperature. We were out of the box. We sense temperature at the return, so that's a reason why for that offset. But again, if the customer has a MHK2 installed, do they need to hit that jumper?
If they want to shut the fan off?
No. For the offset.
The offset, yeah, that too. They still have to cut the jumper. Even if you tried to set that function setting, it probably would accept it, but it's not going to make a change on that unit.
Okay, so
Right,
but I thought we sense temperature at when we plug in automatically CM105 for the MHK2, then we sense that temperature at the MHK2, but the logic's still built in for that offset, isn't it?
Yes.
It is.
Yes. You have to cut the jumper.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, so let's just bring this home here. If I have an M series unit, the model starts with an M.
Yes.
If I'm going to change anything, I'm cutting a jumper regardless, right? So we've already discussed that in a previous podcast. If you're listening and you want to go back and hear about that, go look for it. It's cutting jumpers. What we're going to talk about is the function settings that you can actually do with a remote controller or dip switches.
Right.
So the remote controllers are going to be the PAR 40, the Touch MA. It could be the MHK2.
Yeah.
It could even be the thermostat interface, right?
So for our listeners, I have to add a caveat to what we just discussed, so everyone can get on the same page. If we do cut that jumper, right, to turn off the fan when we satisfy, we make sure that you install a controller
that can sense temperature at the controller.
Do we sense temperature at the controller?
Yeah,
that's
really
one thing
important.
I have to make an important note.
Very good point, because we're sensing at the return air.
Correct.
And that's why that fan is running continuously. So now if that fan's not running, you may not get an accurate temperature reading on the return air. So you want to install a controller that senses temperature.
Now, we talked about app notes in past episodes, how important app notes are. And I think a lot of people kind of just glance at it and don't know what an app note is. Click on it sometime and you will see all of the unique topics that we cover in a breakdown that's available of controllers. And in this particular situation, app note 3048 for indoor unit jumpers and shutting off the fan and thermal off and heat, thermal off and cool. It's a condensed version of what we need to do. It's nice and easy. It's like a 2 or 3 page PDF file. And some of those functions are in there. Now, if I wanted to do outdoor M series, I'm talking M series still, 1-to-1 outdoor unit functions that refer to your service manual. Yeah. So let's just talk about real quick what function settings are available on the indoor units. I have thermal off and heat, thermal off and cool, no height detection in heat mode. So that removes the height detection offset. And then
talk about that.
Number 4, auto restart after power outage. And I always get this question in class: why would I want the unit not to start up automatically after a power outage? What about a generator?
I always bring that up with the generator. You don't want to bring everything come on all at once.
Right. Yeah. And I had this issue at my house. I have a standby generator. Before I had my standby generator, I had a portable generator that ran out of gas. And when I went and started this up, and it was really my fault, I should have shut the power off feeding the house. And I started the generator up. I had TVs in the house that automatically restart after a power outage. Yeah. And I smoked the television set in there.
Ouch.
But the biggest thing is, think about if you have a well pump, a refrigerator, and all of these devices, air conditioner, a heat pump, whatever it is, all coming on at the same time, and that generator taking a kick. Yeah. So that's why we have that option to either have the unit restart after a power outage. That's important in the data center, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But not so much in a residence. Let the customer go and turn that unit back on their own, right? So that's that option.
Out of the box, if there's a power failure, when power comes back on, the units will come back on in the last mode that they were in.
Correct.
Well,
right. So that's out of the box. So the only thing what you're changing is you're getting rid of that. You're saying that when we make that change, that function setting, that we cut that jumper, we're saying when the power comes back, don't come back on.
Yeah, but what I found is most M series will restart themselves after a power outage out of the box, but P series will not. Okay, but don't assume that all models do the same thing. Yeah. You got
always refer to the manual.
Always refer to the manual. I found that out the hard way. Yeah. Now let's talk about real quick before we jump into P series, available M series outdoor unit functions. The first one, in both of these, I kind of I put these in the Northeast.
Yes, so this is your neck of the woods,
right? You're probably never going to touch this, Scott. No. But defrost finish temperature. Why would I want to change defrost finish temperature? If I'm still freezing up after a defrost and I'm still have some ice on the coil,
So you need that extended runtime.
I need that extended runtime. What that does is it just raises the defrost finish temperature. All right. Most people will never ever touch that. If it's not a problem, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Right.
Yep.
My general rule when it comes to changing anything with defrost, whether it's runtime or termination or anything else, chances are that's not the problem. It's going to be very rare that you're going to need to touch that. So be absolutely sure that that's what you need to do. Because I just it's scary to me that people think, oh, I'll just defrost a little bit longer, And so just be careful. Make sure you know why.
Yeah, and I'm not going to
control.
I'm not going to give you temperatures because every unit is different.
Oh yeah.
Refer to your manual. The second one, and again, these are jumpers on the outdoor board that we're cutting. The second one is preheat control. Yes. Okay, and some people get that. They make a mistake in thinking that maybe that's some kind of a heating out of the indoor unit, some kind of preheat.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not.
They confuse it with the preheat mode before the fan comes on. In the heat mode, the coil has to reach a certain temperature. That's not it. Think of it as a crankcase heater. It's not an actual crankcase heater, but think of it that way. The way we heat the crankcase is we're energizing one of the windings, one winding at a time, because it's a three-phase motor electrically.
Yep.
We're energizing one winding at a time, for a few minutes here, then the next winding, the next winding. And this is going to vary by unit too. Some units are going to come out of the box with this enabled, and some units are not. Right. But
right.
Yeah.
So you got to know which
BTUs.
one. And the thing we're talking about cutting jumpers. So you got to refer to the manual, refer to the app note, because cutting a jumper is easy. Uncutting a jumper is not so easy.
Right. Yeah. So I get that question a lot. Well, what if I cut a jumper and I made things worse? Well,
better be good at soldering.
Yeah. It's not a bad idea for a technician to carry a soldering iron in the car. And I tell them in the van, and I tell them, cut one side of the jumper. Don't cut the whole jumper out.
Yeah,
we're talking a small piece
that.
of wire. Just cut one side of the jumper and bend it back and make that open connection. Yeah. And if you had to, maybe you made things worse by cutting the height detection offset. You can always bend that wire back in place and throw a little solder on there, and you don't have to order a new board, right? So let's get into P-Series function settings. Now we have a system that does not start, the model does not start with an M. We're talking our SEZs, our SLZs, our PEADs, PLA, PCA, SVZ, right? And the list goes on. Now, all of those units we consider P-Series style indoor units. Yeah. The control boards have dip switches on them, all right? And also the outdoor units that go with them have dip switches as well.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So whether it's a multi-zone ported or a smart multi or a P-Series, they all have dip switches. All right. Now, function settings on these units can be done at a controller. They can be done through dip switches as well. So the same function setting, I'll give you an example. We could have a function setting, the function setting number 1, auto restart after power outage. That can be done through a controller, or it can be done at the dip switch on the outdoor unit.
At the outdoor, yeah.
It's your choice, but just remember, like anything else with Mitsubishi, last command wins, right? So,
yeah, but majority of your function setting is not going to be dip switches. It's going to be through actually function settings, the setting on the controller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So app note 3050.
One of my favorite app notes.
Yeah, and I don't know how you remember these numbers. I was like, Scott, is there an app note for this? He's like, yeah, it's 3050. I'm like, how do you remember that off the top of your head? That'll show you a whole list of all 28 function settings.
Not even that though. It shows it shows all 28 and the initial positions, which is always nice. But on top of that, it shows you in every controller that we have how to access function settings. So if you have an MHK1 on the job site, you have an MHK2, a simple MA, SDW, a PAR 41.
They added the SDW.
Yeah, they added the SDW, and it shows you a step-by-step process on how to access function settings on that particular controller. I just tell the guys when we do hands-on in a class, and we go to the controls portion, is they always ask me, well, how do I get to the function settings on the controller? I was like, go to app note 3050. It shows you the breakdown for that. And they go right to it and like, oh man, this is the best app note. So,
and I'll tell you what, last year our SDW controller came out and changed everything. Accessing function settings through that controller is a dream. It's just it changed everything.
Because it's real simple to access, right? You can have pretty much all 1 through 28 on multiple screens. It's used the knob, whatever. But I wanted to talk about the Par 40 real quick because there's some confusion on the Par 40 controller to getting access to function settings. For one thing, guys on the call, is remember when Steve said it best, when function settings, we're changing something in the system. So in order the system to take it, we have to make sure that the system is off, not power off, just off on the controller.
Point. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So that, because otherwise, if you try to gain access, the function settings, if the system's on, you won't even see it there. It's like as it disappeared or you can't click on it. So make sure on off, make sure you turn the power off, and then you can access the function settings through there. Once you're in on the Par 40 or the Par 41, depending on what controller you're on, just as we discussed on a previous podcast about the REF, the refrigerant address, remember, 0, 1, 2, 3. So 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be 0, just a 1-to-1 typically for what it is. And then it's going to say below it, it's going to say unit number. Then it says a group, it says a series of things, group /1/2/3/4, and then all.
Right.
Now we have 28 function settings. So where do we know where to go? Well, if you guys don't know this, again, this app note breaks this down, but on the call, I'm just going to give you guys a heads up. If you hit the group section, if you click that, then you'll see function settings 1 through 6, and then function settings 15 through 22. If you select all, then you'll see function settings 7 through 14, and then 23 through 28. So you're going to have to live in both screens. So just be aware. That's the biggest caveat, the biggest confusion I see when we on the Par 40 that people get confused on. Then I show them through this app note, and it gives it a breakdown. What section you need to live in to get into that area.
Yeah, and it's difficult to kind of explain all of this on a podcast.
It is, and that's why, please, guys, when you get home, when you're done listening to this, go on MyLink Drive, go to the app note 3050, and then it's page 7. You will see on the Par 40. You'll see what I mean, what we're talking about. Yeah.
And the default password is going to be 9999. Just think of that. What's that guy that ran for president several years ago? 9999, the Pizza Hut guy. No. Nobody remembers, just me.
I don't remember that.
No, I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah. You guys are too young. But, you talk about one of the things I get a lot of questions on is going to the MHK2.
Yeah.
A lot of people ask me this question. They get confused because of simple math. They need to know the PIN number. Now, there's a 4-digit number on the back of the controller. And in order to get the PIN number, you have to add 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
1,234.
Correct.
That's what I have to say.
Whatever number that is, if that number is 00001, which it won't be, then you add 1,234 to that. Your PIN number is 1,235.
Yeah.
That's an easy way to explain it.
I mean, it's simple math. Put one number over the other and add like they taught you.
And also another way you can access the PIN code, if you go to the menu button on the home screen, you scroll to the right, I believe 2 times, you're going to go see screen lock. And then the first screen is going to say partial lock. Select that as well. Once you select partial lock, you will see your 4-digit PIN code displayed on the screen.
Yeah, so Scott...
I forgot all about that.
Scott found a little back door into the PIN code.
So
don't tell anybody.
All right.
It's top secret. We're going to have to edit that out. That's top secret.
No, it's not.
So Scott, run down some of the you don't have to cover them all, but some of the most important function settings available through a controller.
So probably one of the most popular ones, function setting number 2. All right. That's room temperature sensing location.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so we can change it from reading the return error to the controller. That's probably going to be the number 1 option right there for that. And then another one would be, so what we have is, we all know about static pressure, right? I mean, static setting for our air handler units.
Our ducted units.
Ducted, thank you. Our ducted units. We have to set we set fan speed by static, correct? So that's going to be function code. It's actually 2 of them. if you guys don't, it'd be function number 8 and function code number 10. And there's a chart on this. And guys, the best place where I found getting everything all on one screen, this app Note 3050 is a great one too. But believe it or not, the MHK2 manual. Go through that manual and scroll down a little bit, and you'll see the function codes there, along with the Mitsubishi codes, right? The 3-digit ones. I mean, the Honeywell function codes. Yeah. But below that gives you a static pressure chart for our different ducted units, and it gives it a great, perfect breakdown. What functions to hit, what modes 1, 2, or 3. Yeah. So
now, if I have a cassette, am I going to see function settings 8 and 10?
No.
So this is where it's unit specific.
It knows what unit you're working with, so it knows you can't set static pressure on something that doesn't have.
Yeah, it just depends on what it is. So, like for instance, like a PLA, right? So that is it's labeled here as high performance filter installed. Yes or no? So that could be just because mode 8 is saying that we're saying it's static pressure, but on a different unit, that could be
something else.
Something else. So you have to be very careful when we're reading these things.
Yeah, and there'll be footnotes in there as well.
There is footnotes, exactly right. Yeah. So again, I like to say 8 and 10 for this, just for static pressure for setting up for our ducted units. Another big one is obviously, Steve, is up in your really neck of the woods, is backup heat, right?
Yeah, and that's a good one, because I get a lot of contractors that say, try to set up the backup heat on this unit, and it doesn't work. It just won't work. CN24 is not engaging. Well, correct. You have to go into this function setting and enable that function.
Yeah, it's mode 23.
Yeah,
function 723. Yeah, and what this does is, how do you want to bring on backup heat? Right. You can backup heat disable during defrost air, which that's how it comes, or that's mode 1, setting 1. Sorry. But if you put it setting 2, backup heat is enabled during defrost and air.
Yeah.
So that's how they would need to activate that.
So which function setting will engage the humidifier?
That would actually be function setting number 16 for humidifier control.
Okay. Yeah, yep. So we're using that quite a bit in the Northeast as well.
Yeah, and then how do you bring that one on is, setting 1 is with compressor only, and then number 2 is in heat mode all the time.
Right. So in that case, so I had, a friend of mine, he had a lot of allergies and a lot of things happening in his home, where he wanted the humidifier to run anytime it was in heat mode.
Correct.
Right. Or satisfied even. The fan keeps running. The humidifier is always cycling. Not just when the compressor's running and providing heat. Right.
Yeah.
So that option is there.
So if you change number 16 to whatever setting you went on and it's not working, because there's one other option you have to do. You have to say it's supported. So function setting number 13 is optional humidifier. It's there. It's because out of the box it's 1, not supported. So you have to change that to 2, saying I have a humidifier. Yes. So you change that to 2. So 13, change that to 2, and then 16 is the control of it when you want to bring on the humidifier. Yeah,
so that's what customizes it. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah. And there are other function settings that may not be so popular for people to touch. I mean, you can decide the default position of the vane settings on some of them. Well, we've talked about fan speed with the thermal off, and now there's no jumpers to cut on the P series.
No.
But I agree with you, Scott. The installation instructions for the MHK2 go through all of them, or most of the function settings here.
Yep. So
filter the filter, right? Does the customer want a filter reminder on there? It's either, I think, 1,000 or 2,000 or 2,500 hours. You can have them remind them to change the filter.
Yep. Put the filter sign. So 1 is 100 hours, 2 is 2,500 hours, and then 3 is no filter sign indicator for that. And for the other, probably the next 2 I'm going to mention probably are top ones that we discussed, because we just discussed them previously about cutting jumpers.
Yeah.
Fan thermal off, right?
Yeah. That's
it's 25 and 27. That's so 25 would be for cooling, and then 25 for heating, 27 for cooling.
Yeah,
for that.
And up my way is we're using thermal off and heating most often. Like I said, units. Maybe you oversize the unit in a space that could kind of save you and correct the problem. Short ceilings, gables, and stuff like that, like a finished attic. That's gonna save you butt.
Especially we see them big. Honestly, before we released the 6,000 BTU one-way cassette, because before we had the 9,000.
Yeah,
and about a year and a half, 2 years ago, released the 6. So I know on a lot of 9,000s, we were cutting those jumpers.
Yeah,
for those.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
What about function setting 11?
Good catch there, Steve. All right, so you remember how we discussed mode 23?
Yes.
Mode 23 was for heating control, right? When we want to, what's going on with that? For if you want to, it comes disabled during defrost and error. If you want to enable it, come on during. Do we have to turn that on? Well, in order to have 23 to be engaged, we have to go to 11 to
actually initiate CN24.
To initiate it. Correct.
Right?
Yes, we have to initiate that to come on. Yes, just like the humidifier option, like 13 to engage it. It's the same thing for the backup heat. We need to make sure, tell the system, hey, I'm here, right? Yeah. And then mode 23 is how do we control it?
Yeah, how we want it to behave.
So let's just make sure we understand this, because we don't want anybody to get confused. If I want to use the heater, to choose the heater during defrost or not, I have to first enable function 11.
Yes.
Then I can set. So function 11 tells me whether I'm going to use mode 23 or not. And then function 23 is to disable the heater during defrost or error, or enable the heater during defrost or error.
Yes. Correct. Yeah.
So, using CN24. And that's good.
Yeah, and those on the call we're doing, for CN24, if you guys do not know, we're just outputting 12 DC volts to a relay.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, something interesting I want to bring up is we released a couple of years ago our IntelliHeat dual fuel A-coil, right?
Yes.
What happened to function setting 8 and 10 and function setting 23? They're different now.
They're completely different.
So you can see how it's unit specific. So 8 and 10 is our economic balance
point. Yep.
And 23 is our first or second stage fan. Right, for dual stage or single stage fan operation on the furnace, depending on the type of furnace you have. So you can see, like I said earlier, it's unit specific. Things change depending on what unit we're connected to. So don't assume 23 is always 23 on all units.
All of them. So that's why I always say, like, this is, you can use app note 3050. It's a great basic app note. I will tell you, listeners on the call, it doesn't show every single function setting on there. That's why I like using the MHK2 install manual, because it gives you listed 1 through 28 on there.
Yeah.
And it tells you which model it applies to.
Exactly, which is nice for that.
And if it's not compatible, or actually it tells you which one's compatible for, or it'll say all. Yeah. It'll say all, it'll say PEAD or SEZ or PLA, etc.
And if you look if you go to Unit Pacific Indoor Service Manual for the indoor unit, if you go to that manual, it will only show you not every single function setting. And it's, as I always describe it, it's very dusted throughout the manual. It's not listed in one location.
Right.
This is the reason why I love this list right here. Everything is listed in 2 pages rather than trying to read a 60-page manual trying to find that one particular item. This is where it's listed.
Just like request codes. There's an app note for that, and it puts them all in one spot.
One screen just makes it easier.
All right, I think that covers most of the more important function settings or most used function settings, but to look at a list of all of them, look at application note 3048 and always refer to your service manual, mylinkdrive.com. If you want a more in-depth explanation of function settings and to actually get your hands into a controller, come to our training, right? MitsubishiComfort.com, click on For Professionals, and that'll get you over to our training. Click on training, and
guys, the 1 day we offer a 1 day controls class, right?
Yeah.
The book alone's worth it.
Yep.
As you say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the advanced residential controls class. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we basically it's a very hands-on class, and we basically go through every controller that we can possibly put on an M or P series unit.
Right.
Just about. Maybe not all of them, but 99% of them anyway.
Yeah, we get our hands on the handheld remote, Simple MA. We go over the touch. Then we do hands-on on the Par 40, Kumo Cloud, the Procon. So we do a lot of
334.
Yeah, Mac 334. I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the STW.
If you want to see where that class is, just go to MitsubishiComfort.com, go to For Pros and look for training and find training, and you'll see a calendar there. You can look by catalog, and the residential light commercial catalog for that class. It'll tell you where it's being held and when.
Yeah, we also have e-learning videos and a lot of media that you can watch videos on how to navigate some of our controllers and just overviews on our controllers, Kumo Cloud, Par 40. Did you have any? You were in Orlando this week, Paul. Did you have any seafood this week?
I did not have any seafood. Let's see, what did I eat? I went to a Cuban place that was like a cafeteria style place, and the lady didn't speak any English, and I pointed to something. I go, what is that there? And she goes, okay, and she puts it on the plate, and I go, and what is this here? She goes, okay. And so I stopped asking what it was. I just ate it. I don't know what it was. I'm pretty sure what I had was oxtail. But it was delicious, whatever it was. Of course, I went to Miller's Ale House. I got to get my zingers. It's not just for kids, Scott.
No
the
bang.
adults eat zingers.
Hey,
What's that?
No bang bang shrimp from Bonefish.
No bang shrimp, but I did go to Azul. What's that place called?
Oh
Azul.
yeah, Agave Azul or something
Agave
like that.
Azul. You were talking. You have this obsession with birria tacos, and I had to try them. They were delicious, and they get the little cup of the consomme on the side you keep talking about.
Yeah.
And they gave me some rice. I put the rice when I was finished with the tacos. I go, I'm not letting this consomme go to waste. So I filled it with rice and ate it.
Yeah, I'm pretty bummed out. Scott and I went for dinner last night, and we ordered birria tacos here, and they weren't real birria tacos.
No,
they were just street tacos with some consomme that had very little flavor. And as soon as we're done eating the birria tacos, Scott tells me, "Hey, there's a great place right next to my house that has birria tacos, and they're unbelievable." I said, "Scott, you got to let me in on this information sooner, dude."
Yeah, before you're out of this crappy place.
Hey, Paul,
house,
why do you go to
the one I was never invited to?
I knew this was going to get brought up. Just so you know, every time you are here in Atlanta, I am usually somewhere else.
Not the last time.
Yeah.
Not the last time. They're going to let you get away with that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the last time you were sick. Yeah, supposedly sick.
So what are you cooking me tonight, Scott, at your house?
Hey, real quick, Paul, why you didn't go to, what is it, Fish on Fire?
I did go to Fish on Fire.
Yeah.
I went to Fish on Fire.
Oh, you did? And you didn't order fish?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. I got my 3 tacos.
Oh, okay.
My shrimp tacos, my black and mahi.
All right.
Yeah, and I forget what the third one was.
So
and
he
then
did get his fish.
I had some conch soup.
What kind of chicken did Ralph get?
Ralph got a burger, and he got it. This makes me question him. He got it well done.
Yeah. That's
Ralphie.
can't do that with a burger. All right, we'll see you guys on the next one.